Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in. My name is Amardeep Modi. I'm a vice president with Everest Group, and I lead Everest Group's research on data automation and AI. I'm joined today by two wonderful colleagues, Anish and Ruchin, who are our top SMEs in the enterprise automation space. Today, we are going to discuss how the automation landscape and its enterprise value is evolving as technologies converge and provider ecosystems continue to change. Uh, we have seen a lot of organizations who are or have reached an inflection point where automation has delivered pockets of value, but scaling it in a consistent and sustainable way has been difficult. What's adding a new dimension now is the emergence of agentic AI, where systems don't just execute tasks, but can make decisions, adapt, and coordinate actions across workflows. So, in this session, we will talk about what role enterprise automation platforms are starting to play in building the next gen enterprise operations, how agentic AI and process orchestration are reshaping success, and how leading enterprises are moving from tactical automation initiatives to more strategic and platform led transformation. Before we get into the conversation, into the thick of the conversation, quick question for the audience. Um, which automation use case has benefited you the most? Please share your answer in the comment section. We would love to kind of understand, what use case have benefited you the most. What's closest to your heart? We'd love to hear that. Okay, so I think getting into the conversation, the first question that I have for you, Anish, is we have seen CXO priorities evolve over time, right? And we have seen it influence a lot of different things. So could you share some insight on, hey, how we are seeing the CXO priorities evolve and how it is influencing the tech spend and buying decisions?
Sure. Thank you, Amar, for that. And hello, everyone who have tuned in. Excited to be discussing about this topic. So first and foremost, that's a great question, right? And really captures the shift we are seeing across enterprises right now. If I were to summarize what's happening, it would be this: technology spend hasn't slowed down, but the bar for value has gone up significantly. So, based on certain recent enterprise surveys and ongoing CXO conversations, it's clear that leadership teams are becoming far more intentional about where they invest and why. Technology decisions are no longer just driven by experimentation or fear of missing out. They are being anchored very tightly to core business priorities. If you look at what CXOs are focused on today, it's majorly about accelerating revenue growth, improving profitability, boosting productivity. So these are some of the major objectives of CXOs. And when you look at the most impactful levers enterprises are prioritizing to achieve those goals that we talked about, enterprise, technology adoption and innovation clearly is the biggest lever that enterprises use. And not surprisingly, that hasn't changed year over year. But what has changed is, how CXOs want that technology, right? So there's a clear move away from fragmented point solutions toward platforms that can anchor business operations end to end, and enterprises are actually gravitating toward a platform of choice mindset, a solution that can orchestrate workflows, that can integrate data and scale across functions, rather than just solving isolated problems. At the same time, we are seeing an accelerated spending in AI and automation nowadays, but with far more discipline than before. It's no longer about do we need AI, rather that is settled. Rather, the questions are where does AI move the needle? Which are the use cases which justify investment? So it's more about the next steps rather than whether we need AI or not, right? And that is where process optimization, operational efficiency have climbed so high as investment priorities. AI and automation are increasingly evaluated not as just innovation projects, but as mechanisms to simplify operations. Another major shift, which is influencing the spend decisions, is the intense focus on TCO and ROI. CXOs are scrutinizing not just the licensing cost, but the entire cost of technology, implementation, integration, maintenance, talent requirements, etc. So net, CXOs are becoming much more deliberate about sequencing these investments rather than spreading budgets within many initiatives. They're actually prioritizing fewer high impact bets, especially in areas that combine modernization and measurable business outcomes.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, as you rightly mentioned, it has just become more and more important. It's the nature has changed to much more strategic now. So it's not about do we do that. It's more about, hey, how do we do that, right? And how fast we can ensure scalable and sustainable impact. Great. So, Ruchin, my next question is for you, right? So, we see enterprises adopt different approaches to adopting automation, right? We have seen them typically start with point solutions and then scaling up or consolidating into a unified platform approach as they scale the deployment of automation across multiple use cases which require different capabilities, right? And necessitating the need for a more unified end-to-end automation platform. So how have we seen that evolve over time, right? To what extent do we see enterprises still going with point solutions for automating use cases versus starting with a more unified automation platform approach?
Right. Um, Firstly, I would like to say hello to everyone who has joined in for the LinkedIn live session. And yes, Sama, to your point, you are absolutely right in saying that. And the way enterprises have consumed automation today looks very different from where it all started, right? So most automation journey began very tactically, and enterprise adopted point solution to solve for specific problems. And so to say, like RPA for maybe back office efficiency, IDP for your document heavy workflows, or process mining tools to improve visibility into business processes. So all that approach made sense at that time because the focus was primarily on the quick wins. And what's changing now is the scale and criticality of automation. It's no longer limited to very few functions or teams, and it is becoming embedded across your enterprise operations, customer facing processes, and your business workflows. And as the consumption expand, right, so the enterprise have started to feel that friction of managing automation through multiple point solutions, right? And which is very evident, which is also very evident in the surveys that we have conducted over the years. And enterprises are very explicitly talked about these challenges that showed up. Large majority of them have highlighted the level of effort which is required to integrate technologies from different providers, the high total cost of ownership, owing to mostly driven by maintenance and support that is required in maintaining these solutions, and the time which is needed to build and deploy automation at scale. There's also one very practical issue that often get overlooked is the need to train multiple users on these tools and interfaces, right? Which directly affects the adoption and the overall ROI of the initiative. As a result, we are seeing a clear shift in how enterprises today are thinking about automation consumption. And instead of asking which tool is best for the use case, the question is increasingly becoming what is the right automation platform for the enterprise, right? And this is where the platform-based approaches are actually gaining traction. Enterprises see value in having a more unified environment, a single interface, more like a single or a consistent governance practices, and an integrated intelligent automation capabilities with a more simpler relationship model with a technology provider. That said, I would say it doesn't mean that the point solution are going to disappear entirely. Many enterprises are still today using a mix of both the approaches, especially where uh, you require specialized capabilities, right? But the broader trend is clear. Enterprises are becoming more intentional about how the automation is consumed, with a growing preference to platforms that can support scale and the long-term vision of the enterprise.
No,
I
absolutely.
hope that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense, Ruchin, and I think as we have seen the automation landscape evolve from point solutions like RPA to more unified platforms like intelligent process automation platforms with a lot of capabilities that enterprises need to scale automation. Right? We have been doing a lot of research to understand that, hey, how the providers have also evolved their capabilities, and which are the providers who are kind of leading in terms of building this unified platform. And that's where I think it's a good I think time to also let our audience know about like the report that they can download, or a complimentary abstract of the report that they can download, where we have assessed all the leading intelligent process automation platforms, and we have a lot of research in terms of how the space is evolving, the going into the depth and breadth of the capabilities of these platform providers. And our viewers today, audience today, can use the QR code on the top right corner of the screen to download a complimentary abstract of that report, to see, hey, how different providers are stacking up against each other, what the landscape of automation, unified automation platforms look like. Okay, great. So I think we have seen adoption of automation platforms from almost every industry, from every geography, across business functions, and across enterprise sizes. Right. So how are we seeing some of these adoption patterns evolve? Are there certain industries which are leading the adoption of more unified, intelligent automation platforms? Are there certain geographies where we see more adoption of such platforms? So, Anish, if you could shed some light around, hey, how are we seeing the adoption of automation platforms evolve across geographies, industries, enterprise sizes, and business functions?
Sure, sure. So what we are seeing right now is that automation platform adoption isn't moving in a single straight line. It's segment driven. So there are different buyer sizes, geographies, industries, functions. They are adopting it at different speeds, and for different reasons, of course. So the most useful way to look at it is who is adopting fastest, why, and where is the next wave expected to come from. So let me start with the buyer size piece, because it seems to me that it's the clearest pattern. So some of the mega and large enterprises, they dominate adoption of automation platforms. And that's primarily because their automation agenda is enterprise-wide. They aren't thinking in terms of use case by use case anymore. They are thinking more in terms of standardizing a platform across business units, building governance, ensuring compliance, right? So that naturally drives larger deal sizes and longer-term commitments. And these buyers also typically have more mature transformation programs, larger COEs, and a clear mandate from leadership to scale automation. Right? What's interesting is that large buyers also tend to be the earliest adopters of newer capabilities, and that has happened across different technologies like process intelligence, orchestration, new agentic features, because they have the complexity where these tools actually matter. Right? Is these tools and technologies should not be silver bullets which solve any problem for you. Right? They should be used where they actually where they're actually needed. And large enterprises typically deal with those complex processes, and that is where these tools and technologies make more sense. Right? If I talk about the mid-size or the small buyers, on the other hand, they form a smaller share at this point for platforms. They are more inclined toward point solutions at this point in time to solve their immediate automation needs. But we are actually expecting and seeing a change in that direction as well, seeing more interest from the mid-size buyers to go for platforms over time. If I move to geographies next as the buyer segment, right? It's not surprising again that North America continues to lead overall market share, which again aligns with the maturity of digital transformation initiatives, the aggressive efficiency targets that they have, and stronger adoption of automation as a strategic lever. This is also where we tend to see early platform adoption decisions. Next, if I look at continental Europe, they show a healthy adoption, almost, let's say, about a bit less than half of the share of North America. And a big reason is that combination of strong enterprise awareness and national level digital initiatives that encourage modernization, which again leads to the adoption of platform more. But Europe's adoption comes with a unique enterprise expectation as well. There's a stronger alignment to compliance, transparency, and regulatory frameworks, right? That is unique to the geography. In APAC, what stands out is the growth momentum. A lot of economies in this region are seeing rapid digital adoption, rising operational scale, and strong pressure to improve efficiency. So it is at a relatively smaller share as compared to North America, but in terms of growth, this is growing very fast. And also buoyed by the fact that there are a lot of GCCs which are coming up in this region, especially India, which are adopting automation and using platforms for those initiatives. And some of these GCCs are have become strategic units nowadays. They are taking the decision and the budget decisions themselves, which is again fueling the adoption of platforms here in this region. Next, if we look at industries, we are seeing concentration in sectors with high volume, high risk, and compliance heavy processes. So again, not surprising that BFSI holds the largest share, right? Banks and insurers have massive process volumes, strong compliance requirements, and clear ROI paths in automation as compared to some of the other industries. They tend to build more structured automation programs. Next, after BFSI, would be the healthcare and pharma industry, which is driven by the need for operational efficiency, regulatory compliance, and modernization, and that is also contributing to more platform adoption. But interestingly, one of the fastest movers in terms of growth has been the government and public sector across many geographies, right? So there are modernization initiatives and citizen service improvements, which is driving the need for, again, platform adoption in various government and public sector across countries. So finally, if I talk about the functions, again, we see adoption where concentration is high. So the biggest share comes from industry-specific process as a whole, as a consolidated unit. So it could be from banking specific plus healthcare specific process. That as a whole is the biggest chunk. That is where the highest volume is, and most domain independent workflows sit there. But if I look at horizontal process areas, and finance and accounting is the major driver here. I mean, if you talk about invoice processing, APA, AR, etc., there's high volume, structured. So spaces where automation is highly measurable and implemented.
And also, traditionally being very high in those areas. Yeah.
Absolutely. In those areas, and that is true for for the other technologies, as we talked about some of the industries being quick to adopting this. F&A again is that function which usually quickly adopts because of, again, high volume and high standardization. Yeah, contact centers also actually remain a big focus because enterprises are trying to drive self-service, reduce cost in these areas,
especially with generative AI coming into the mix.
Yeah, exactly. With many of the human agent assistive technologies, I mean, the use cases have proliferated there.
Yep.
So the overall story is, I mean, adoption is expanding, but it's being shaped by maturity, pressure points. Large buyers lead adoption. APAC is the geography where there is highest momentum. BFSI is the industry anchor, and industry specific and F&A processes are where the adoption is the highest at this point.
So Adish, any specific regions within APAC that you would want to call out where we are seeing most growth coming from?
Sure. Maybe let me highlight a few. So as I mentioned, right, within APAC, I think India is the country where there is a lot of adoption, primarily because of GCCs, shared services, or GBS or GCC, whatever you want to call it. Those are sort of synonymous in nature. Primarily because again, they have become strategic units of deploying AI automation. So they naturally need more platforms. Apart from that, as I was talking about the government and public sector, right? So Australia is one country where there is a lot of involvement by the government to drive those digital initiatives. So we are seeing Australia also. There are other industries as well, but in terms of government and public sector being an important influence, that is one country. Again, Japan is one country which already is digitized to a great extent, but there are many industries now which are opening up to this kind of automation platforms from across the world. So if I have to call out, I think these three would be the major economies within APAC for me.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think I think while we have seen adoption across various industries and business functions, and some of the functions that Anish you talked about, right, where we have traditionally seen great adoption of automation, and with the emergence of Gen AI, there are other areas that are emerging where we are seeing more potential for automation, and enterprises kind of have started deploying more automation in some of those areas, like customer service, for example, right? So, Ruchin, my next question is for you, right? So, as we think about some of those interesting use cases, right, where we are seeing more adoption of automation taking place, or where we see a greater, demand and greater potential of automation deployment, especially in the context of the unified platform approach that we have been talking about, right? What are some of those use cases where you think where we see most traction, and where we
Right.
see most adoption of automation?
Sure. So, building on what I would say the niche just shared around the industries and the functions which are seeing the strongest adoption,
Mm,
we also see very clear use case clusters emerging within these areas, right?
mm,
And talking firstly about the business function, which Anish mentioned, right? So, finance and accounting,
mm,
like literally leading the pack.
mm,
And automation is most commonly applied to, I would say, invoice processing, reconciliation,
mm,
regulatory reporting, in the areas where it's high volume,
mm,
repetitive tasks, tightly linked to and very tightly linked to business outcomes.
mm,
And talking about the contact center or the GBS setup, platforms are being used across service request handling,
mm,
onboarding, case management, post interaction follow ups.
mm,
And there's a lot of growing focus on supporting agents in a real time rather than just automating the back office tasks.
mm,
And that all revolves around with the advent of agentic AI, right?
mm,
So that being there, then we also have IT services, which is popping up with a lot of use cases around process automation.
mm,
And these common use cases include your incident management, service requests, change workflows, infrastructure monitoring,
mm,
where automation essentially is helping teams scale and improve response time.
mm,
And talking about some of the industry specific processes, specifically around banking, I would say we consistently see adoption in customer onboarding,
mm.
KYC, loan processing, transaction monitoring. And all of these is driven by scale, turnaround
Yeah.
time, and regulatory requirement. And across industries, I would say banking and financial services, healthcare and pharma, high tech and telecom, they continue to take the lead with automation primarily focused on compliance heavy, document intensive, and operationally complex processes. And with that, I would say now, Amara, let me just share a quick example from a asset management space that brings
Mm,
this whole use case scenario to life, right?
mhm,
So I'll just give you an example of a large APAC-based asset management firm which was managing over 75 billion in asset and
mhm,
was going through a broader technology transformation. And the firm wanted to simplify both front office and back office operations, reducing manual work and strengthening compliance and risk management.
mhm,
And like many enterprises, their early automation efforts were spread across different teams and point solutions. That's how the automation usually starts, right? They had some success, but
mhm,
scaling automation consistently across the organization was becoming difficult, owing to the very same challenges that I talked about a little while back, right? So the firm decided to take a platform-led approach
mhm,
to the whole automation scenario. And instead of adding more point solution, they brought a single process automation platform
mhm,
with key intelligent automation capabilities such as your RPA, your intelligent document processing, your advanced analytics, your process intelligence, your process orchestration. And the goal was to create a foundation that could eventually scale rather than just automating individual tasks.
Mm.
And they started with analyzing over 80 processes, right? So it included your front office support, your client reporting, back office operations. And from there, they were able to prioritize and focus on 19 high impact processes,
Mhm.
automating in areas like compliance reporting, client communication, document processing, and regulatory monitoring. And an important part of this journey was using the process intelligence, like I mentioned, right? They were able to map how the work actually flowed and prioritize the right automation opportunities within the enterprise, right?
Mhm.
And talking about the result, the firm achieved over 1.5 million US dollars in annualized savings, and they reduced the manual effort significantly and improved the overall efficiency. There were a lot of other indirect benefits, but these were the ones that I would want to highlight. And now coming on to the interesting part, uh, with a stable automation platform in place, the enterprise started experimenting with agentic AI, right? So
Mhm.
they are now piloting use cases where agents help monitor workflows. They're flagging exceptions. They're recommending next actions. Uh, but with a caveat, right? So always with a clear human oversight, especially since it's a compliance heavy decisions in an asset management space. So that's just one example. There are lots more such examples, but
Mhm.
this is one I
Mhm.
wanted to talk about.
No, absolutely. And, great to kind of always hear how enterprises are actually adopting it and what benefits they have been able to realize, what capabilities they were able to deploy at what scale and things like that. I think that example that you shared really brought this entire thing into to life, that, hey, how process intelligence was used to identify use cases, how many processes were initially in the pipeline, how many were prioritized, what capabilities were used, what value was realized. So absolutely, I mean, really interesting, and that also from an APAC used enterprise from APAC geography, right, which is one of the high growth areas where we see a lot of new adoption of automation platforms taking place. So, thanks, Ruchin, for sharing that. I was when you were kind of talking about some of the use cases, right, where we see enterprises adopt automation platforms, right? One thing that was coming to my mind, I'm sure our audience also would have felt that, was that, hey, these are the same use cases that were relevant when RPA was being adopted, right? So what has really changed over time, right? So I think that brings me to my next question, that, hey, the use cases may look more or less the same, right? I mean, of course, there are new set of use cases that have become more important, more relevant, right? But that doesn't mean that the previous use cases where RP was deployed are not relevant, right? It's more about the incremental value that now enterprises are able to achieve through a more unified platform approach, through agentic AI. So, Anish, my next question is for you. What is the incremental value that we see enterprises getting from, or can expect to get from, layering agentic AI and other, or technologies like orchestration, right, on top of their traditional automation deployments, on top of their, RPA deployments that are already in place.
Sure, sure. So this is actually one of the most important shifts happening in the market right now, because this changes the very definition of what automation means in the enterprise context. Historically, automation platforms were designed around deterministic execution. You define a workflow, you specify the rules, you wire up the systems, and automation executes exactly how you coded it, right? But I mean, this model is powerful and it's still very relevant, but it has a ceiling. It works best when the world is predictable, the data is structured, and exceptions are manageable.
Mm.
But what's happening now is, not that enterprises are abandoning deterministic automation, not in any way. Rather, they are expanding the automation stack
Mm.
to include probabilistic and autonomous capabilities. In other words, automation is just not executing steps anymore. It is about achieving the outcomes as well.
Mm. Mm.
And a simple way to think about this evolution is this: we are moving from traditional automation to agentic automation, across many dimensions.
Mm.
First, the nature of automation changes. Traditional automation is deterministic. Agentic automation is a combination. It's a blend of autonomous as well as deterministic. Right? Deterministic components still do what they are best at, which is repeatable execution and reliability, while agents can be brought in to handle those parts that require interpretation, planning, and decision making. As you mentioned, the scope of orchestration also expands. In traditional environments, orchestration is essentially coordinating humans, APIs, and RPA or process orchestration, those kind of deterministic components.
Mm.
With agentic, orchestration now includes agents as well as first class participants, so to say. The work is no longer about just humans APIs, but it is about coordinating between human and agent and agent, so multi-agent scenarios as well. The third is the learning and adaptation. Traditional automation tended to be supervised and static. It improved only when you retrain models, but agentic automation is more dynamic and context aware in nature. It can adjust its behavior based on how new context and changing conditions. Now, let me put a caveat here. I mean, we are in the journey. It's still early days. So in terms of developments in the platform, again, there are certain providers who have been able to demonstrate certain capabilities. Others are catching up. If I talk about enterprise deployments, there are some who have moved into the production stage, while others are still catching up in the pilot or POC stage. So again, it's a continuum, it's a journey. It won't happen overnight. But what I'm stating here is this is the capability or sort of the North Star that agents will be able to take those decisions in those scenarios, right? Finally, another important change is the governance and control. So traditional automation relied heavily on centralized controls. Agentic automation requires something more nuanced, AI guardrails, configurable autonomy, and so on and so forth. So these are certain changes. Now, how is this evolution playing out in the platform landscape? So what we are seeing is the emergence of what you would call an agentic process automation platform. Right? It's the next gen stack that combines classic automation along with the agentic capabilities and the generative AI capabilities that we talked about. The enrichment is obvious in the capabilities which existed earlier, such as RPA, IDP, but the architectural shift is taking place in some of the other areas as well. One is, of course, orchestration, and process orchestration is evolving into agentic orchestration. As we talked about, agent to agent, human agent, those kind of capabilities are being added to the platform now. The second would be, a dedicated data enablement layer that we are seeing in many platforms nowadays. This is critical. Enterprises are realizing that agents can't operate effectively if they don't have the right context.
Exactly.
And that context lives within enterprise data. So data enablement layer within these automation platforms is about gathering the data, activating it, and serving that data to AI systems so that you get meaningful insights out of it. So if you connect all of this, it's about traditional or classic automation combined with agentic orchestration plus data enablement. This is where the platform evolution is taking place. Enterprises can now expect higher autonomy in complex workflows and not just task automation.
Absolutely. And that kind of provides a good segue into the next question that I wanted to ask, and just to kind of double click on what you just mentioned, Anish, right, around the next generation automation platforms, right? So I think everyone is going to be interested in understanding that, hey, what really defines a next generation automation platforms, right? Because we have been seeing continuous evolution of automation from deterministic automation technologies like RPA to a more AI getting added to it through IDP, then more orchestration layer getting added to it, process intelligence layer getting added to it, now Gen AI and agentic AI layers getting added to it, right? So if as an enterprise buyer, if I have to kind of put my finger on, hey, what is that next generation automation platform looks like, what are the capabilities that I really need to kind of look for in that platform? So Ruchin, my question is for you. So over the next 12 to 24 months, right? In fact, 24 months probably is a very long time frame given the pace with which things are evolving. So let's maybe let's take a 12 months horizon, right? So over the next 12 months, what capabilities do you think will be truly important for this next generation automation platforms as enterprise buyers think about sourcing
Mm.
their automation platform for more strategic requirements.
Right, Amar. And I think you are absolutely right in saying that the pace at which things are changing, predicting how things are going to look like after 24 months, it's very difficult, right? Especially that the capabilities are changing daily, right? We are hearing about new things almost on a weekly, monthly basis.
Mm.
So, so when we talk about the next generation automation platforms, right? I think it's useful to start with what's really changing the direction of these platforms, and that's pretty much agentic capabilities in the recent past, right? And over the next 12 months, we are going to see agentic AI move from being just an add-on to becoming a core design principle for automation platforms. And what that means is platforms are increasingly being built to support agents and not just your bots and workflows. And talking about a few capabilities which stand out when I talk about agentic AI, firstly, your agent builders, right? So they're becoming increasingly important because enterprises can leverage those to build and configure agents and not uh, uh, and like configure agents around specific goals and rather than just hard coding the steps for the agent. Along with that, we have agentic orchestration, which is critical because it allows agents to coordinate workflows instead of just operating in silos. Then we are also seeing early momentum around your multi-agent collaboration, where different agents can handle different parts of the process. And finally, your domain-specific agents, which are more aligned to like a business function that could be like a finance or operation or compliance. So they are built to function around these layers, right? And what really matters though is that the agentic capabilities are being designed with guardrails, right? With
Mm.
context, with oversight built in.
Mm.
So enterprises today are not looking for a fully autonomous system everywhere. They want agentic systems that can act within a well-defined boundary and work alongside people with a human in the loop. Right. So once we have all that context, the next big capability area that I see is around the Gen AI capabilities within the platform. And talking about some of those capabilities, the first one that comes to my mind is building workflows using natural language query. Uh, then we have advanced dashboards and insights driven by natural language queries, right? Which makes it easier for the business users to ask questions, right? To understand automation outcomes.
Mm.
And then I can say it could be like AI based monitoring, right? So it's
Mm.
another important capability because the platforms can proactively surface any exceptions, any anomalies, risk, or any performance issue rather than just relying on the static rules. And beyond agentic AI and generative AI, there are some foundational capabilities that still continue to define the next generation platforms. And the first one, which I would want to highlight, is the data enablement, right? And
Mm.
as platform becomes more and more intelligent, right, having a secure, well-governed access to enterprise data is critical. I would say it's like mandatory as of today. And without that foundation, neither Gen AI or agentic AI capabilities can deliver consistent result when any enterprise decides to scale on it. And finally, I would say highlight an intuitive user experience, right? U- or a unified experience across different IA capabilities will matter more than ever because as platform bring together workflows, agents, orchestration of those agents, intelligence. So the overall complexity will like keep on increasing. And
Mm.
the platform that succeed will be the one which makes it easier for the user to navigate those challenges and the complexity. And yeah, so I would say these are those capabilities which I see maybe in the next 12 months are going to gain more popularity and like more platform providers will be adopting them.
Mm. Mm. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the key to success for, I think, platform providers will be to help enterprises navigate the changing landscape, right? So not just be a software provider, but also kind of adopt a more consultative, solution driven approach to help enterprises
Yes.
solve the business problems that they are for which they are actually adopting these automation solutions, right? So for that, some of that they can do themselves, some of that through partnerships with other SIs or consulting firms or service providers. But I think the focus should be on helping enterprises solve for the business problems versus just selling a software. We are also getting some questions, interesting questions from the audience. So let me bring up one. So this is about test automation, which is interesting, right? So we talked about a lot of use cases and a lot of use cases where in front office and back office. We talked about some IT use cases as well. So Anish, do you want to kind of comment around how we are seeing automation getting deployed in test automation kind of use cases?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of interesting advancements which are taking place in test automation, right? Maybe off the top, two or three that come to mind are, self-healing scripts. Nowadays, there are, AI/ML algorithms that are used to detect changes in the application's UI and automatically they update the test scripts, drastically reducing the maintenance time. It's also about autonomous generation of those scripts. So AI tools analyze behavior and they are able to generate relevant test cases automatically. And of course, we are talking about democratization using low code, no code tools, right? There are many tools which allow non-programmers as well to automate or create those automated test scripts. So these are certain advancements which are taking place in this area. It's a critical component of the entire value chain of automation, and that is also getting benefited by AI and agents as well. You might wonder, why is it not part of the platform that we talked about so far? I mean, the platform that we are defining, we define it within the scope of business processes and business process automation, and hence we did not include it as a capability within the platform itself. But without a shadow of doubt, this remains a critical component within the entire value chain of deploying and implementing automation in enterprise scenarios.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of other such, areas, right, outside of the process realm where automation is being deployed, and test automation is one of those areas, right? So coming back to the topic, Ruchin, you kind of talking about, what will be very important for enterprises to consider as they kind of think about the next 12 months, as they think about the next gen automation platforms, right? And when we look at the automation technology provider landscape, right, the supplier landscape, again, we have seen so many changes over time. A lot of M&A activities happening, a lot of new capabilities being developed by traditional automation providers, a lot of ways in which RPA heritage providers have evolved to become much more than just RPA, to kind of really become more agentic automation providers in terms of the capabilities that they have built, in terms of the value that they bring to the table, right? So at the same time, we are also seeing different approaches and different categories of providers that have now been created in the automation landscape, right? So so Anish, would you like to shed some light around, hey, what are those different categories of providers do we see in this space, driven by a lot of acquisitions, especially from big tech companies, or big tech companies entering this space, enterprise software, enterprise platform companies, ERP, CRMs of the world, kind of entering the space. Traditional BPM platforms kind of pivoting into something new, something transformational, and kind of also entering the orchestration automation space. So a lot of these changes. So so yeah, do shed some insight around how do we see this entire landscape in terms of different approaches that different types of tech providers are taking to provide an automation platform to the enterprises.
Sure. So the provider landscape for enterprise automation is getting more crowded, more competitive, and honestly, more confusing. And that's largely because Gen AI and Agentic AI have blurred the boundaries of what an automation platform means. A few years ago, it was relatively straightforward. You had automation specialists on one side, BPM players on another, enterprise software platforms doing their own workflow automation. Today, almost everyone is positioning themselves as central to the enterprise automation and AI strategy. And they are all chasing a much more unified opportunity owing to orchestration, intelligence, outcomes across the business. Now, based on recent research, the market now clusters into a few broad categories of players. First, you have the hyperscalers, such as Microsoft, AWS, etc. These providers bring foundational infrastructure and AI services. They are strong in scalable compute, model access, integration with broader cloud services, right? And of course, enterprise grade security. Second, you have the enterprise platforms such as Salesforce, SAP, ServiceNow. These platforms are embedding agentic experiences directly into the systems where work resides, right? So, likes of CRM, ERP, service management. I mean, their pitch is generally that automation should live inside the system of work itself, and that is what we provide, right? It's integrated into the applications that you already use. Third is, and this is where most of the market sits. It's about the automation specialists and BPM heritage providers together, including players such as UiPath, Automation Anywhere, SS&C, Blue Prism, Appian, Pega. So these are some of the major names here, right? And the range of other providers across IDP and automation, right? This segment accounts for the largest portion of the market at this day and age, and historically anchored enterprise automation programs around these. So these providers typically bring breadth across RPA, process intelligence, orchestration, etc. And there is one more category which is fast growing, but still relatively a very small segment. This is the agentic AI native providers, like Relevance, Orbi, etc. Their core differentiation is that they are designing around agents first, with often with low code agent building, low code, no code, and multi-agent orchestration. They are agile, nimble, but at this point it's not still proven that about their enterprise maturity, because as I said, they are pure play new providers in this area. So now the key question or the point is, everyone is converging toward the same platform. Some are building some of these capabilities in-house, and Amar, as you mentioned, some are acquiring it, but everyone is trying to play out or compete for that common pie. So how do you decide what are the differences in how these providers approach automation? Helpful way to look at it would be the center of gravity of each of these categories. Of course, it's not cast in stone that they cannot operate beyond what we will be talking about now, but it's mostly about what their traditional strengths are. Now, the hyperscalers, of course, they excel at infrastructure, model access, broader AI service, and security, right? They are ideal when enterprises have strong in-house engineering and one customization, but they often require more assembly to get to business-ready outcomes. If I talk about the enterprise platforms, they focus on embedding automation inside the enterprise software ecosystems that enterprises already have. Their strengths typically are faster adoption and native integration into workflows. Trade-off could be that may lean within their own ecosystem with limited evidences of an open architecture in many scenarios. The third is the process automation platform category, including BPM that we talked about. These providers aim to orchestrate agents alongside deterministic automation, and they also bring in process intelligence and operational insights together. They seem to be the natural fit for enterprises with existing automation investments who want to evolve into agentic automation as well. And for the last category, which was around pure play platforms, they specialize in domain specific agents, low code, no code agent builds. It's all around agentic. Some of the traditional automation capabilities are something which they're trying to build in or acquire. But at this point, it remains to be seen how that fares in enterprise context, right? This is early for them. So from enterprise perspective, what's changing is it's not about the best RP or the best workflow tool. It's about aligning platform choice to their broader goals. And there are certain factors that we talked about, which are their strengths. They need to identify which platform suits their requirements best.
Absolutely. So there is no one stop or one size fits all kind of an
Absolutely.
approach for enterprises, right? So enterprises, depending upon their own environmental factor, their own objectives, their unique challenges, may go with a certain category of automation platform provider versus the other, right?
And just one point there is, I mean, you rightly brought this up, right? It could be a scenario where a multi-platform strategy is actually not irrational for
Yeah.
enterprises, depending on their
Mm,
strengths.
And that's something that we are kind of we have seen in play a lot,
Yeah.
right? That there are enterprises have followed a two platform approach,
Hmm.
two vendor
mm,
approach, right? Because for multiple reasons, right? For different use cases, maybe different platforms were better suited. That may be one
Yeah.
reason. For to avoid vendor lock in, to hedge risk, could be another
Hmm.
reason, and a variety of other reasons, right? But we have seen
Absolutely.
that as a prominent play among a lot of enterprises as well. At the same time, we are also seeing enterprises who have done a two platform kind of an approach in the past. As they make things more strategic, as they consolidate their IT landscape, they're also trying to consolidate into a one platform, right? So
Yeah.
that kind of approach we have also seen. So it just depends upon the specific challenges, specific environmental factors, objectives, and goals, as you rightly mentioned, Anish, that enterprises are facing. So Anish, thanks for putting some structure into this very confusing, fast evolving, fast changing, automation tech provider landscape, right? And a quick note again for my for our audience today that we have done a very in-depth assessment of the entire automation platform technology provider landscape, and we have assessed the capabilities, the impact that these automation providers are bringing for their enterprises as part of this research assessment that we did. Um, and this includes all the leading automation platform providers. You can access a complimentary abstract of this report by scanning the QR code that is appearing on the top right corner. This is exclusive benefit for the audience that we have today, and do let us know. We're always available. In case you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or on email, and we'll be happy to kind of see how best we can address your questions. And keep your questions also coming up in the chat. We are also kind of reaching the kind of end of the LinkedIn Live session. I have one last question for you, Ruchir. Right, we have talked a lot about how things are changing, how priorities are evolving, how buying decisions are evolving, how sourcing patterns have evolved, how capabilities have evolved, how use cases have evolved, and how benefit expectations have evolved. Right now, let's take a closer look into, hey, what has really worked for enterprises who have been able to successfully make all of this happen to get a lot of tangible benefits for them. So the enterprise case study that you talked about, right? So
yeah.
enterprises like them. So what really worked for them? What are we seeing from our conversations with all these enterprises, and including the enterprises, especially the enterprises who we see are more mature in adopting, some of the next gen technologies like agentic AI, right? So what has really worked for them in achieving measurable success and impact?
Right, Amar. So, when enterprises move from experimenting with automation to scaling it, the challenge really changes, right? So at that point, it's not necessarily about proving that the automation works because they've already done that, right? They've done the POC, they've seen that automation is working, but now they're going to scale it, and it is more about figuring out how to make it work consistently, safely, and at scale, right? Especially now that the platforms are becoming more intelligent and more agent driven, like you mentioned, right? And like with with our discussions with the enterprises, right? So all this time we were able to like boil down our insights to these five best practices.
Mhm.
And like the first one is more around taking a phased approach, right? So even though there is a lot of excitement around agentic AI, enterprises that scale well don't try to do everything at once, right? So
Mhm.
they usually start with a very small set of use cases where the value is obvious and the risk is also something which they can manage, right?
Mhm.
And they learn from those early deployments and when they expand gradually, right? That approach helps build the confidence both in the platform and how the teams work with it. The second big factor that I would want to talk about is the executive buy-in. As automation platforms become more central to how work gets done, having a CXO level sponsorship really matters. And that support makes much easier to prioritize the right set of use cases, secure funding, resolve trade-offs as the automation programs grow. Another idea which often gets underestimated is the data and platform readiness. I've talked about this point earlier also, and I'm like cannot emphasize enough. But data and platform readiness is one of the very critical aspects of getting ready for any automation initiatives. And as
Mhm.
automation becomes more intelligent and more agent driven, the foundation starts to like really matter. Enterprises that do well invest early in data quality, standardizing your data,
Mhm.
and platform readiness. So the automation can actually deliver the kind of results that you expect, right? And the use case, as and when the use cases become more and more sophisticated. And like then there are your guardrails and oversight, and especially with all the agentic capabilities coming in on the platform and defining how the platforms are built, enterprises are very deliberate today about setting boundaries. They define what the platform can do on its own, where the human approvals are needed, and how the actions are being monitored. And this isn't about slowing things down, right? So it really is about building a trust that can make sure that automations behave in the predictive way as it scales. Nobody likes surprises, right? So yeah. And finally, there's people and change management, which I think is true for any new initiative at an enterprise scale. Change management plays a very critical role because at the back of it, it's the people who govern everything.
Mhm.
So automation actually also changes the way the whole work gets done. So enterprises that scale well, they invest in training, they invest in
Mhm.
communication and ongoing enablement. They
Mhm.
bring business, IT, operations teams together early. So the automation feels like more like a shared capability, shared effort, rather than just an IT initiatives, which is getting pushed across the enterprise. So I would say these five are the critical uh, best approaches that any enterprise should follow if they are going ahead with an automation initiative.
Absolutely. I think you hit on all the right points, Ruchin, and I'm sure our audience would benefit a lot from all these best practices that we have seen work well for other enterprises who have achieved um, really good value and scalable impact from their automation deployments. With that, I think we are ready to conclude our session for today. Thank you to everyone for joining us, listening to us. Feel free to reach out in case you have any questions. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, reach out to us, and we would love to see how best we can address your questions. um, do not forget to download the complimentary abstract of the intelligent process automation peak matrix assessment, as part of which we evaluated all the leading intelligent automation platform providers in the space across all the categories that we discussed about. And feel free to reach out to us in case you have any questions. We'd love to address them for you. So, with that, Thanks, Anish and Ruchin, for sharing very valuable insights. I'm sure our audience would have found those very interesting and useful. And with that, thanks everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.